If there's one constant in all of Dexter, is that every single season, Dexter would face up against another serial killer big bad. And Dexter New Blood was no different. But did the serial killer big bad of Dexter New Blood live up to the hype? Was it as good as the other killers? Did it work on its own? I'm here to deep dive into Kurt Coldwell, the serial killer big bad of Dexter New Blood. Obviously, spoilers for Dexter New Blood, so don't watch if you haven't seen Dexter New Blood. But I mean, if you cared about Dexter, you've probably seen it by now. And if you don't really care that much, you've probably heard what other people think of the finale, and now you don't really care that much. So, straight up, Kurt Coldwell, the Dollmaker, is a much better final big bad villain for Dexter to face up against, compared to the Brain Surgeon we got in Season 8. But that's not really saying much of anything, because the Brain Surgeon is one of the most boring, uncharismatic, terrible characters in the entire of Dexter's run. He's atrocious, so it's really not that much of a step up to say he's better than the Brain Surgeon. So, Kurt Coldwell, played by Clancy Brown, who is amazing in the performance. He's giving as much as he can with the script and everything. He plays the serial killer, the Dollmaker. At least that's what I like to call him. People on my comments of my Dexter New Blood reviews were saying he's called the Runaway Killer, but I don't remember hearing that once in the show, and I'm never going back to double check. So at first, the Dollmaker is played as a mystery, like, who is this masked gunman who's trapping women in this, this room, this hotel room looking thing, and then he lets them escape, and then he shoots them in the back, and he's got like a ski mask kind of thing, so he's like this masked gunman at first. And, the mystery's kind of interesting for a few episodes, but that never really feels like a full-on mystery. There's not enough characters. Was like, who is it? It's really just one red herring, which is the billionaire character, played by bloody Yellow Eyes, and he's amazing, but he's only in a couple of scenes where he's overly creepy, and he's so obviously, like, potentially the killer. But I always knew it wasn't going to be him, because I know who Clancy Brown is. He's a famous actor, and when he's got the mask on, I can see his eyes. I could see his eyes. I could just tell it was him. And so a lot of people online were like, ooh, maybe he's a second killer. Maybe the billionaire is like a second killer. Or once, we were like, what's happening with the bodies? Where are all the bodies going? Maybe the billionaire is buying the bodies and he's got some perverse thing he's doing with them. All these ideas were amazing. And it's, once again, just one of those kind of things where fan ideas and fan theories can really be so much more exciting than what we get, which is really just very cut and dry. After the lackluster non-reveal reveal that it is in fact Kurt, who is the serial killer big bad, Yellow Eyes isn't in it again. He's only in the first few episodes, so he's not even like a character, and all the side characters get completely dropped like halfway, and we can only focus on like the big minor side characters. They all completely drop away, so I understand, but he's not in it again at all. So he doesn't even feel like a side character. He just feels like this flimsy fake character that was just a half-baked red herring. And I hate that. You don't cast someone that amazing in such a just nothing role. It just felt completely undeveloped, completely, half-baked, flimsy, disgusting. Absolutely hate that aspect of it. Kurt having an accomplice and that being like the rich billionaire of the town, I think would have been really, really exciting and added an extra wrinkle onto this story that was kind of needed, I think. So yeah, the mystery aspect of this serial killer didn't work for me at all. So now the ritual. All these serial killer big bads of Dexter, they've all got their own ritual, their own blood slide, their own, kill room kind of situation going, and Kurt is no different. So he gets the women, he gets them in a room, he watches them, but it's not sexual or anything, and he's watching them, then at some point, he lets them escape, and as they're running away, he shoots them in the back. And as this kind of plays out, we find out like a little more, like he goes to the same bar and plays the same song, and all those little kind of bits I found kind of exciting and terrifying, and I was waiting for that kind of origin reveal to reveal like, why is he doing it the way he does it? But I don't think it all comes together in the end. So it's revealed that his dad used to beat up hookers and he'd watch like from a distance in the the front of the truck, and that was it. So because his dad beat up hookers, he's like, anyone that runs away isn't deserving of life because someone like my dad might beat them up. So I'm going to trap them in a room and then shoot them in the back, then preserve them like dolls in a big bunker dollhouse. Like, what the hell? That's completely like flimsy and it just feels like he's a psychopath who just like shooting women in the back. Like he shot Iris that one time and he's like, I'm a piece of shit. I love shooting people in the back. And so he created all this other stuff and he's blaming his dad and all this stuff. But it just doesn't work for me at all. It just feels really flimsy. It feels like a really lame attempt at trying to recreate what was so good about the Trinity Killer. And so the Trinity Killer had like 3, and then we found out 4 kind of stages of his ritual. And as we found out that origin in that amazing road trip episode with Dexter and the Trinity Killer, now we find out all these little tidbits and all these horrific things that kind of led to the Trinity being who he was. But it's not just being like, and so much of that it really is the same, where it's just like, so this happened and now I do this because of this. But in that, like, the tragedy and heartbreak of Arthur, but then the monstrosity and the perverse, way he's kind of twisted that all into being just the worst man who ever lived, was fascinating. The character and the writing and the performance, everything was working. In this, Kurt's just like, oh, I don't know, my dad beat up hookers, so I'd shoot people in the back. Like, ugh. It just felt really half-assed. I really didn't think it worked and gelled the way they think it kind of did. I was really excited and waiting for this kind of origin reveal to kind of feel like that Trinity one, where it kind of clicked and, you're not going to humanize him where I'm on his side now, because you're never on the serial killer's side, but I thought it was going to humanize him in a way that kind of made it slightly more tragic and, just an extra layer to him, because he was just kind of an angry brute. And he ended up just being an angry brute. Like, if anything, the origin made me dislike him more, felt like he was less charismatic now. So yeah, I really don't think the origin of the ritual worked at all. There is almost this really interesting, amazing kind of idea that they start playing with. And he's got like the second victim that we see in his bunker, like in the hotel room kind of looking thing. And she's like, sees the camera, is like, you're already dead. And she's like, oh no. And then she thinks like, oh, okay, this is some weird sexual thing. So she starts getting naked and like stripping for him. And he freaks out and he's like, no, no. And you're like, whoa, why is he like so against this sexual kind of like sexualization of her? Like what's so confronting to him about like her getting naked? And I found that really interesting at first. And at first it's like, oh, okay, we're going to find out more. This is going to be fleshed out more. But it's really not. It's just, okay, so his dad beat up hookers, so it's not sexual to him. He's just saving them from sexual abuse or whatever. But that never really felt like it worked for me. I think a really interesting and kind of exciting way to kind of, play with this idea would be to have Kurt be celibate and, have scenes at home where his wife, I don't think we ever see or hear anything about his wife or anything like that. So I think it'd be really interesting to play with that and have him be celibate and like maybe even Matt's not his actual biological son because he couldn't get it up and he can never get it up. Or maybe he's like, he has to just like every now and then try really hard. Like maybe there's an anniversary scene where he has to try really hard and take Viagra or I don't know, something so he can get up. Because for him, he's not sexual at all and he can't. But like Dexter with Rita at first, Dexter was like, oh, I gotta have a girlfriend so I can fit in with everyone and I'll use Rita like that. And it changes and evolves, but at first it's that, like just to fit in. So I think it'd be really exciting for Kurt to have to try and like fit in and be sexual, even though he's absolutely not. And that would just be a really interesting kind of element to play into the character that would make it kind of just more layered and more fascinating and terrifying and just interesting, rather than just being a big angry brute who's just kidnaps women and then shoots them in the back, which is just so like, I don't know. I just think there was so much more to play with here, and there were so many more kind of avenues and ways to parallel him and Dexter trying to fit in and like hide their dark passengers. And they just weren't developed properly. And there were tidbits. Like, I didn't just come up with this on my own. It's like they gave me the seeds for this idea. But yeah, no, just like none of that. It's just like one tiny little scene where he freaks out when she gets her tits out, and that's it. So it's just like really half-baked, half-assed, that's pretty much this character. Half-baked, half-assed. And it's not even just this character. It's most of New Blood when you start to re-examine and rethink about it. You're just like, there's so much potential here, and it's like so close to clicking. You're like, and you're like, it's not. You're just one little thing away from it kind of working. Another element that I think always is one of the strengths of the serial killer big bads that Dexter faces off against, and the fact they have to face off like serial killer versus serial killer, is their kind of just dialogue, scenes together. The scenes where the two serial killers sit down and they have like an exchange of moments, and there's so many different ways that in the original series these scenes would play out. Like with Miguel Prado, they were friends, budding friendship that kind of turned. With Isaac the mobster and Dexter, there's all these really fantastic kind of out in the open scenes where they know each other as like a killer or whatever, and they're kind of sparring verbally, and there's a bit of dry humor. All these little cheeky scenes, like one of them in particular when all the cops are around and they're both just sparring at each other, and we know what like the subtext of what's happening, and everyone else is like, oh, these guys are just quipping together, bit of fun. And then you have like Trinity and Dexter, where Dexter's trying to learn from Trinity without Trinity realizing that at first, and just so many different ways that they can have these conversations with these two big, crazy, different serial killers. And so much of the series is this. And then these two characters, Kurt and Dexter, really don't get much of that to play with. Like, there's a little bit of tension at first where Dexter's like, oh god, like I've killed this guy's son and he doesn't know. But then suddenly he just knows. And he's just like, I figured it out. How? Who knows? just easy storytelling, just convenient storytelling. I kind of think the most interesting stuff that Kurt gets to play against is with Harrison, especially in episode 8, where they kind of have this fake father and bonding scene, where, you know, Kurt's using Harrison to get closer to Dexter, but, you know, they have some really kind of almost real true bonding moments, and it works really well for both characters. And I know that Dexter New Blood, you know, is focusing a lot on Harrison being the new blood and all this kind of stuff, but I still think it's a missed opportunity. I mean, we're bringing Dexter back. It's the final Dexter season. I want to have more Dexter. I want to have more stuff that works for Dexter and worked in the original series, and, you know, utilize the elements that really work, and one of them being serial killer versus serial killer. And there's so many different ways to do that, and I think that wasn't really fleshed out and utilized properly, because the scenes that I can think of with them, you know, sparring against each other was most like, there was one scene where he goes into the bunker and he's like, oh, what's going on about here, Kurt? And Molly's there and everything, and it felt like it was building up to something, and then they just bail, and it's just like, oh, don't worry, we'll deal with that later. There's a lot of like, oh, is this going to be a big scene? Oh no, we'll just, you know, kind of like just, you know, teetering on the edge of something being very exciting and interesting. And really the best scene with them is the kill table, you know, the final scene with Kurt. And often that's a really good, strong scene for any of the serial killers. It's the final moment. They're both kind of open and fully, you know, they realize who Dexter truly is when they see the kill table, and Dexter's true, like, facade is dropped, and it's really just Dexter Morgan, the Bay Harbor Butcher. And this scene really is quite spectacular. I mean, that whole episode building up to that moment is really, really great. But the way they capture Kurt is very just like, hey, surprise, Kurt, and then just down, easy. And like, so when like they're having Christmas and they're with Angela and they're all having fun, and then Kurt appears and he's like, oh, if I knew you boys were here, I bloody would have brought you presents too. And, you know, there's some sinister undertones to everything. But then it really doesn't kind of come through. It's not utilized fully, I feel like. There's just scenes here and there missing where they could really kind of make this character really work. And the actor Clancy Brown, he's just spectacular. Just like every season, except for, you know, like your Brain Surgeon and your Skinners and your really bad ones. They always find such amazing, huge, fantastic actors. And I just don't think they let him sink his teeth into enough material. Like, I don't know, this really could have just been 12 episodes to really let him flesh out as a character and not feel kind of like we need another serial killer of the year. Like, let's get this in here somewhere. And yeah, that kill table scene, it's his best scene. And I think the thing that works really well for Kurt in that moment is the same reason that all the good serial killers of Dexter worked, is that they're great on their own, but they also, you know, really kind of bring something out of Dexter, whether it's Trinity and Dexter trying to be a father and a serial killer, or the Ice Truck Killer revealing so much about Dexter's past and their brother lineage and all this kind of stuff. And what Kurt's final kill scene really brings out of Dexter that really works is that, like, Kurt's like flimsy cobra is like, oh, I do all this because my dad, blah, blah. It's like, shut up. And Dexter's like, shut up, Kurt. Shut up, Kurt. You're all bullshit. This is bullshit. You just like the power and the feeling it gives you when you shoot women in the back. You're just a monster. But then Kurt's like, what are you talking about, Dexter? All this code or killing killers, like, you're full of shit too. Your facade is bullshit too. And I love that. It was such a great moment where Dexter's like, has to shut him up and put the thing in his mouth to stop him talking, before Harrison goes, yeah, hold on, Dexter, I think he's making a pretty good point there. So that was all really, really fun. I really like that he kind of calls Dexter on his fake code bullshit. And I just think that's really, really great. That's a great, great moment. But it kind of feels like too little, too late. So I kind of feel like the character is really, really working in some regards, and then really kind of a half-baked and not working in a lot of other regards. But the one moment that truly did work for me, for it's just utter, horrific, terrifying, just unbearably disgusting and just awful, was that bunker dollhouse reveal, like his trophy room. We finally find out what happens with all the bodies and why he's painting them, and why when he shot the woman in the face and he's trying to fix it, like it wasn't good enough, because he's going to have them on display like they're dolls preserved in their packaging. It's huge, it's big, it's terrifying, it's disturbing, and it really is once again reinforcing why Dexter killing someone like Kurt is good. Like, Kurt deserves to die. He's a monster. He's got this giant trophy bunker dollhouse room. It's disgusting and it's horrific, and he's got away with it for so long. And so it's so satisfying for Dexter to kill him and stop this awful, horrific kind of reoccurring tragedy that this small town is dealing with. But this whole kind of element of Angela knowing that someone, or like thinking, she's got a gut feeling that someone is doing all of this, and then Dexter proves it, figures it out, and stops him. But we never have Angela kind of come to terms with that. Once again, it's feeling slightly underdeveloped, because we have this character in Angela finally figuring out in the finale that it was Kurt, and she's walking through and she's horrified. She sees Molly, she's all these people she remembers, but she never gets a moment to confront Kurt, to convict him, or to confront Dexter on the fact that he's stopped Kurt. and is she satisfied that he was able to kill Kurt because she wouldn't be able to legally, with the law, and she's very, by the law, she was never able to kind of, punish him properly and like fully and make sure that nothing ever bad happens because of this evil, evil man? Or is she, disgusted that he took it too far? Like she wanted to put Kurt on trial, but there's so many different things where, what does Angela truly think? But in the end, none of that comes to fruition because she sees the doll bunker, and then it's just like, oh, Dexter's dead. Harrison, get out of Dodge. You can't date my daughter. Run away. You're Simba, Scar. Get out of here. And that's it. It just feels so close to something really working because, a great villain, brings something out of the characters and makes them question themselves and change and adapt and all these things. And it's so close to all of that coming to this head, and then it doesn't. So it just feels a bit disappointing in the end. And so overall, I'm looking back on him and I'm just like, so much does work. And I think the highlight is the performance. Clancy Brown, amazing, like so good. But the writing just not working for me on all these tiny little things that feel like if you change tiny little moments or add a scene here or there, it really would have worked. And for a character that's in so much of the season, I kind of think he should work more, whereas a lot of the other villains are only in half the season sometimes, and they feel more fleshed out, more developed, more working and focused in the story they're trying to tell for that season. So ultimately, I feel like this character has a lot of unused potential, which unfortunately is really a reoccurring theme of Dexter New Blood in almost every regard when I am reanalyzing it and re-examining it and thinking about it post the finale. It's been a week and a bit now, and it's just, that's a reoccurring theme. So where does Kurt Coldwell, the Dollmaker, rank compared to all the other Dexter serial killer big bads of the show? So just for quick context of where I'd rank all the other serial killer big bads for Dexter, so from 10 to 1, we've got Hannah McKay, the brain surgeon, the Skinner, Doomsday, Jordan Chase and his Barrel Boy gang, Miguel Prado, Isaac the Mobster, the Ice Truck Killer, Trinity Killer, and then the Bay Harbor Butcher. So, where does Kurt Coldwell, the Dollmaker, rank in all of these? He's definitely not as bad as the worst three. Hannah, Brain Surgeon, and Skinner, I hate them all for very different reasons, but just know, those three are way up, like way just in their own league. And then the top 5, I think they're in their own little segment. They're all so good, leagues better than all the other characters. But then we've got the middle section, Doomsday and Jordan Chase. I still really like most of the elements of these characters, but there's tiny little things like Kurt that are kind of weighing them down from being in that top 5, but they're nowhere near as bad as the bad 3. So Kurt's somewhere in there, so I guess out of the now 11 serial killer big bads, he'd be number 8, 7, or 6. I really still don't know where he'd fit. I think I like Doomsday and Jordan Chase more, but also I've had 10 years to kind of reevaluate and rethink on them, and when I rewatched it all, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed their characters and their seasons. There's a lot of really good stuff there, so hopefully, in 10 years' time, I'll revisit New Blood, and I'll have a newfound appreciation of what really works for him, and the things that don't work, I'll have gotten over, So, yeah, in the middle section, let's just give him number 8, Bloody, if you want a more in-depth analysis of why I ranked the serial killers in those places, check out my Ranking the Serial Killer Big Bads of Dexter video. Bloody, on my channel, check it out, link in the description, all the things, it'll be here or here later. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'd love to know, did Kurt Coldwell work for you? Do you have a better name than the Dollmaker? Someone else in one of my other videos commented, the Mannequin Maker. And I really like that. That's a really good one too. But yeah, comment below. Was he a big yay? A big nay? Are you sick of thinking about New Blood? I think a lot of people are. But I really did want to make like a little brother-sister video to my rankings video to kind of place Kurt and where he'd rank with the other killers. But yeah, thanks for watching everyone. Bloody like, subscribe, all the YouTubey things, and comment below and tell me all your thoughts about Kurt Coldwell, the Dollmaker.